Walk down the stairs into any church basement around 1962, and the first thing that hit you was the smell. Coffee in a 40-cup percolator, something cheesy bubbling under foil, and the long folding tables, the kind that pinched your fingers, lined end to end with covered dishes carried in on the laps of station wagons. Number 19 on this list was the dish that started a quiet feud between two families that lasted 3 decades. And number 2? That's the one nobody admits they miss, yet everybody asks for. The Library of Congress keeps over 3,000 of the little church cookbooks these recipes came from, published between 1864 and 1922 alone. So pull up a metal chair. Let's count them down. Here's what made a church supper a church supper. It wasn't fancy. It was the handwritten recipe card, smudged with 20 years of fingerprints. It was the casserole carrier with somebody's masking tape name on the bottom so it found its way home. It was the unspoken law that you brought enough for everyone, plus a little extra, because Lord knows somebody always showed up empty-handed and hungry. These 35 dishes fed Methodist potlucks and Lutheran funerals and Baptist homecomings from one coast to the other, and most of them have quietly slipped off the folding tables for good. If you grew up sneaking seconds in a fellowship hall, do me a kindness and subscribe, because we're saving these recipes from the recipe card drawer of history, one warm dish at a time. Now grab a paper plate, the flimsy kind that buckles, and let's begin. Number 35, ambrosia salad, canned mandarin oranges, crushed pineapple, miniature marshmallows, shredded coconut, and a generous fold of sour cream or whipped topping, all stirred together into a cloud and chilled until cold. It went in the salad lineup, though there was nothing remotely green about it. The name means food of the gods, and the church ladies took that literally. By most accounts, it spread across the South in the late 1800s and never quite left. Sweet, cold, faintly tropical in a landlocked Tuesday sort of way. Half the congregation called it a salad, the other half called it dessert and ate it last. Both groups were correct, and both refused to admit it. Number 34, 7-layer salad, built in a clear glass bowl so everyone could admire the geology of it. Lettuce on the bottom, then peas, then a stratum of celery, water chestnuts, hard-boiled egg, a thick sealing layer of mayonnaise across the top, and a snow of cheddar and crumbled bacon. You did not stir it. Stirring it was nearly a sin. You served it in archaeological cross-sections, so each plate got every layer. It looked impressive on the table, and it kept well, which is exactly what a potluck dish needed to do. Make it the night before, haul it in cold, and watch it vanish before the casseroles even got their foil peeled back. Number 33. Watergate salad. Pistachio instant pudding mix, crushed pineapple, marshmallows, pecans, and whipped topping, stirred into a pale green fluff that arrived in the early 1970s riding the pudding mix wave. Nobody quite agrees how it got the scandalous name, and that disagreement is half the fun. It showed up at potlucks looking faintly radioactive and tasting like a dessert that snuck into the salad section under a fake passport. Cooks loved it because it took 5 minutes and a single bowl. Children loved it because it was green and sweet. The cook who brought it always got asked for the recipe and always said, "Oh, it's nothing, just a few things thrown together." Number 32. Lime jello salad with shredded carrots. Here come the congealed salads, and they ruled the church table for decades. Lime gelatin set firm around grated carrots, crushed pineapple, and sometimes, brace yourself, a scoop of cottage cheese suspended in the middle like a mystery. Wikipedia and food historians trace the craze to perfection salad, created by Mrs. John E. Cook of Newcastle, Pennsylvania, back in 1904, who said, herself, she planned to bring it to her next church supper. Lime jello hit during the Depression, and the savory mold mania never looked back. It jiggled. It glistened. It was, for a generation, the height of sophistication, because a fridge to set it in meant you'd arrived. Number 31. Tomato aspic, the bravest entry in the whole congealed canon. Tomato juice, gelatin, a little Worcestershire, and lemon set into a trembling red ring and unmolded onto a lettuce leaf. No sugar, no fruit, just savory, jiggling tomato that the fancier ladies served with a dollop of mayonnaise in the center hole. It was considered elegant, the kind of thing you made when the pastor and his wife were coming. Younger folks today look at it sideways and shudder. But there was real craft in a clean unmold, and the woman who could turn out a perfect aspic ring held genuine status in the fellowship hall. Stick around, because number 25 is the salad nobody could spell. Number 30. Cottage cheese and Jell-O ring, a first cousin to the aspic. This one paired lime or orange gelatin with cottage cheese folded right in, set into a ring mold, and turned out cold. The cottage cheese gave it a curious, cloudy density, somewhere between salad and dessert and dare. It traveled well, it cost little, and it filled the salad table with that wobbling pastel shimmer that says mid-century church basement louder than anything else. Some loved it dearly, some pushed it politely to the edge of the plate. Either way, somebody's grandmother made it every single Sunday, and to her it was as natural as bread. Number 29. Frog eye salad. Don't let the name scare you. It's tiny acini di pepe pasta, those little round beets folded into a cooked egg and pineapple juice dressing with mandarin oranges, pineapple, marshmallows, and whipped topping. Popular among Latter-day Saint congregations and across the Mountain West, it earned its name from the pasta pearls that look, well, a bit froggy. Sweet, creamy, and oddly addictive, it filled a big bowl cheap and fed a crowd. Children dared each other over the name and then ate 3 helpings. It's one of those dishes that sounds like a joke until you taste it and quietly go back for more. Number 28. 5-cup salad, also called fruit salad or millionaire salad. And the recipe was right there in the name. 1 cup each of mandarin oranges, pineapple, coconut, marshmallows, and sour cream. Stir, chill, done. It was the dish you sent your teenager to make because nobody could ruin it, and it was the dish that always materialized when somebody forgot they'd signed up to bring something. 5 cups, no measuring cup required beyond the 1. The very picture of potluck democracy, easy enough for anyone and good enough for everyone. Honest, cold, and sweet. It asked nothing and gave a full bowl. Number 27. Deviled eggs. Now we're talking. Hard-boiled eggs halved, the yolks mashed with mayonnaise and mustard and a whisper of paprika, then piped or spooned back into the glistening whites. The daily meal and food historians trace the idea clear back to ancient Rome, where spiced eggs opened a banquet, though the modern mayonnaise version showed up in the 1896 Boston Cooking School cookbook. They surged at American picnics and potlucks after the Second World War, helped along by the spread of the refrigerator. Southern brides got special oblong deviled egg plates as wedding gifts, and the woman who owned that plate brought it full every single time, no exceptions. Number 26. Pickle and pimento cheese roll-ups. Cream cheese softened and spread on a slice of boiled ham or a tortilla, a whole dill pickle laid down the middle, rolled tight, chilled, and sliced into little pinwheels. Or the pimento cheese version, that beloved southern spread of cheddar, mayo, and chopped pimentos, rolled the same way. They sat on the appetizer table looking like somebody had put real effort in, and they vanished fast. Easy to make, easy to carry, easy to grab with a toothpick while you found your seat. Finger food before finger food was a phrase, and a quiet showcase for the cook who liked a tidy spiral. Number 25. Sauerkraut salad. There it is, the one half the congregation couldn't spell. Drained sauerkraut tossed with chopped peppers, onion, celery, and a sweet sour dressing of sugar and vinegar, then chilled a full day so the flavors married. German and Eastern European immigrant families brought it to the Midwest church table, where it sat tangy and crunchy beside the sweeter salads like a sharp-tongued ant. It kept for ages, which a potluck dish must. It cost almost nothing. And it gave the table a bright, puckery note that cut clean through all that mayonnaise. Plain, thrifty, and quietly beloved by the people who knew. Number 20 changed how a whole region named dinner. Number 24, funeral sandwiches. Little ham and cheese sliders on soft rolls, brushed with a buttery glaze of poppy seeds, mustard, and Worcestershire. Then baked under foil until the cheese went molten and the tops turned glossy and golden. They earned the somber name because they were the dish you made by the dozen when a family was grieving, and the fellowship hall needed feeding fast. Warm, savory, easy to carry in the pan they baked in. There's tenderness baked right into them, the kind of food that says, "I don't have words, so I brought you something hot." Few dishes do comfort quite so plainly. Number 23, chicken and biscuits casserole. Shredded chicken in a creamy gravy, often built on a can of cream soup, topped with biscuit dough, or canned biscuits and baked until the top puffed golden and the underneath bubbled. It fed a crowd from one pan and reheated without complaint, which made it royalty in the casserole kingdom. The biscuits soaked up the gravy at the edges and stayed fluffy on top. Homey, filling, and forgiving of however much chicken you actually had. This was the dish the busy mother of four signed up for because it stretched, it pleased, and it never, ever embarrassed her on the table. Number 22, scalloped corn. Canned or fresh corn folded with crushed crackers or cornbread, a beaten egg and milk, then baked until it set into a soft, custardy, golden casserole with a crisp top. Cheap as anything, since corn was the most affordable vegetable in the cellar, and it filled a big dish to feed many. It sat in the hot food lineup giving off that sweet, toasty smell, and it disappeared steadily all through the meal. Not flashy, never the star, but the table felt incomplete without it. The dependable middle child of the church supper, always there, always good, rarely thanked. Number 21, baked beans, the church supper kind. Navy beans baked low and slow with molasses, brown sugar, a little mustard, and salt pork or bacon laid across the top until the sauce went dark and thick and the kitchen smelled of sweet smoke. Every congregation had a bean lady whose recipe was law, and you did not cross her. The beans simmered for hours, which meant love and patience went in alongside the molasses. They held heat in the pot for the whole meal, and only got better as the afternoon wore on. Cheap, hearty, and deeply communal, the dish that says, "Everyone eats today." Coming up at number 15, the cake that started arguments. Here's where I want to slow down because we've been laughing our way through the salad table, and the salads deserve the laugh. But notice what every one of these dishes has in common so far. They travel, they stretch, they feed a stranger as easily as a friend. That's not an accident. The church supper was built on the quiet genius of women who knew exactly how to make a little go a long way and look generous doing it. From here down, the dishes get heartier, and the stories get a touch deeper. Keep your plate handy. Number 20, hot dish. In Minnesota and the Dakotas, they didn't say casserole. They said hot dish, one word, and they meant it. The food etymologist Dan Willert traces the first printed hot dish recipe to a 1930 cookbook from the Grace Lutheran Ladies' Aid in Mankato. Budget-minded farm wives invented it to feed their own families and the whole congregation in those first church basements. Ground beef or tuna, a starch, a vegetable, and the binding magic of a can of cream soup baked in one pan. It was thrift, community, and Lutheran identity in a single dish. To this day in that country, hot dish is less a recipe than a birthright. Number 19, tuna noodle casserole. the dish that started a 30-year family feud, the one from the hook. Egg noodles, canned tuna, peas, and a can of cream, of mushroom soup, the famous Lutheran binder, topped with crushed potato chips or buttered crumbs and baked until bubbling. Campbell's released its condensed cream soups in 1934 and printed casserole recipes right on the can, and the dish took off across church basements everywhere. Cheap, filling, and ready from the pantry. The feud, of course, was over the topping. Crushed chips versus crushed crackers versus cornflakes, and two families who each knew, absolutely knew, that the others were doing it wrong. Number 18. Green bean casserole. Canned green beans, a can of cream of mushroom soup, and a crown of those crispy fried onions baked until the onions went deep gold and the middle bubbled. Campbell's home economist Dorcas Riley invented it in 1955, and it marched straight from the test kitchen onto every potluck and holiday table in the nation. It cost little, it came together in minutes, and that crunchy onion top made it feel like an occasion. Some cooks turned up their noses at how easy it was. The rest of us just kept asking for the corner piece, the one with the most crispy onions. Few dishes have ever been so plainly, popularly loved. Number 17. Swedish meatballs. Little meatballs of beef and pork, gently spiced with nutmeg and allspice, simmered in a creamy brown gravy and kept warm in a chafing dish or a slow cooker. Scandinavian Lutheran congregations across the upper Midwest claimed them proudly, a taste of the old country dressed for the new one. They sat there glossy and fragrant, and folks speared them 3 at a time. The gravy was the whole argument, rich and savory and clinging. Make a double batch because they went first, always, before the casseroles, before the salads, before you even got your coffee poured. Number 10 is the dessert that fed entire weddings. Number 16. Ham loaf. Ground ham mixed with ground pork, bound with crumbs and egg, shaped into a loaf and baked under a sweet and tangy glaze of brown sugar, mustard, and vinegar. Pennsylvania Dutch and Midwest congregations made it to use up the ends of a good ham, thrift dressed in its Sunday best. It sliced clean, served warm or cold, and traveled like a champion. The glaze caramelized into a glossy, sticky top that the children fought over. A little sweet, a little savory, deeply old-fashioned. Nobody under 60 seems to make it anymore, and that's a genuine loss, because a good ham loaf was a quietly wonderful thing. Number 15. Texas sheet cake. The cake that started arguments, just like the hook promised, because every cook swore hers was the true recipe. A thin chocolate sheet cake, baked fast and wide in a jelly roll pan, with warm chocolate icing poured over, while the cake was still hot so it soaked in and set glossy. Studded with pecans across the top. It fed an enormous crowd from one pan, which is precisely why the church ladies adored it. Cut into small squares, it stretched to 50 people easy. Moist, rich, and quick, it was the workhorse dessert of 1,000 suppers, and the cause of more friendly recipe rivalry than nearly anything else on this list. Number 14. Lemon bars, a buttery shortbread crust pressed into a pan, topped with a tart lemon custard and baked until just set, then dusted with powdered sugar once cooled. They cut into neat squares, they traveled on a foil-covered tray, and they offered a bright, puckery contrast to all the chocolate and the cream. The cook who brought lemon bars was usually the precise one, the one whose handwriting on the recipe card was tidy, and whose squares were all exactly the same size. Sweet, sharp, and sunny, they were the dessert table's palate cleanser, and they vanished just as fast as the richer things beside them. Number 13. Snickerdoodles. Soft sugar cookies rolled in cinnamon sugar before baking, so they crackled across the top and stayed chewy in the middle. The funny name likely comes from a German or Dutch word, and the cookie has been an American church bake sale staple since the late 1800s. they were cheap to make in enormous batches, which is exactly what a potluck or a fellowship coffee hour demanded. A platter of snickerdoodles meant somebody had been baking since dawn. Warm cinnamon, soft centers, that gentle, crackled top. Simple, humble, and beloved. The cookie that taught half the country's children how to help in the kitchen. Number 12. Rice Krispies Treats. Melted butter, melted marshmallows, and crisp rice cereal, pressed into a pan and cut into squares, once cool. Kellogg's printed the recipe on the box back in 1939, and it became the dessert anyone could make, even the household with no baking skill whatsoever. It needed no oven, just a pot and a strong arm for the stirring. Children helped press it into the pan. It cost almost nothing and pleased absolutely everyone. The square that always appeared when somebody remembered at the last minute that they'd promised a dessert. Chewy, sweet, and foolproof. The great equalizer of the bake table. Number 11. Banana pudding. Layers of vanilla wafers, sliced bananas, and creamy vanilla pudding, sometimes crowned with meringue browned. In the oven, or a drift of whipped topping. A Southern church supper monarch, it traveled in a big glass dish so the layers showed. And it only got better as the wafers softened into the pudding over the afternoon. The recipe spread through community cookbooks across the South in the early 1900s. Cold, soft, sweet, and nostalgic to the point of tears, for many. The dish a grandmother made that you'd give anything to taste one more time, exactly the way she made it. We're into the final 10. Let me pause right here, because this is the tender heart of the whole thing. Every recipe left on this list came to the potluck on a handwritten card, and that card usually carried a name. Edith's beans. Marge's sheet cake. The dish wasn't just food. It was a person, brought into the room, set on the table, shared. When these recipes faded, we didn't just lose flavors. We lost a way of remembering each other, of saying, here is what I make. Here is a piece of me. Eat and be glad. That's the truth sitting underneath these last 10 dishes. Number 10. Wedding or sheet cake, the white kind. A simple white or yellow sheet cake under fluffy white buttercream, sometimes with a few sugar flowers piped on by the steadiest hand in the ladies' aid. It fed entire weddings and anniversaries straight from the fellowship hall. No caterer, no bakery, just the church ladies and a couple of jelly roll pans. Cut small, it stretched to the whole congregation. It wasn't fancy, and it didn't try to be. It was the cake of belonging, the one that said, this community shows up for its own. In joy as faithfully as in grief, sweet, plain, and quietly profound. Number 9. Chicken Devon. Cooked chicken and broccoli layered in a creamy sauce, often built on cream soup with a little curry and a blanket of cheese, topped with crumbs and baked until golden. It felt a touch elegant, the casserole you made when you wanted to impress without breaking the budget. The name nods to a New York restaurant where a version was born in the early 1900s, but the church basement edition leaned hard on the pantry. Rich, comforting, and a little fancy, it gave the cook a way to feel she'd brought something special. And she had. Number 8. Porcupine meatballs. Meatballs studded with raw rice, simmered in tomato sauce until the rice cooked through and poked out the sides like tiny quills, which is exactly how they got the name. A Depression-era stretch the meat trick that the rice extended into a full, filling dish on a thin budget. Children adored the name and the look. Cooks adored how far a pound of ground beef went once the rice did its work. Saucy, soft, and thrifty to the core, they were proof that the church supper never stopped being clever about money, even in the flush years. Number 5 is the casserole with the strangest name of all. Number 7. Macaroni and cheese, baked. Not the boxed kind here, but the real church supper version, elbow macaroni folded in a proper cheese sauce, topped with buttered crumbs or extra cheese, baked until the top went crusty and brown and the inside stayed creamy. it fed children and grandparents alike. The one dish nobody ever refused. Cheap, hearty, and universally adored, it sat in the hot lineup radiating comfort. Every congregation had a mac and cheese champion, and her pan came home scraped clean every time. Golden on top, molten beneath, it's the casserole that somehow still tastes like being 8 years old in a fellowship hall. Number 6. Sloppy Joes for a crowd. Ground beef simmered in a sweet and tangy tomato sauce, kept warm in a big roaster, and spooned onto soft buns by the dozen. The church supper version was built to feed a youth group or a whole congregation cheap, and it did. Messy by design, hence the name, it sent everyone reaching for extra napkins, the flimsy kind from the dispenser. Kids piled their plates high. The roaster stayed warm all afternoon. Humble, fun, and endlessly stretchable, it was the dish that turned a fellowship meal into something loose and joyful and just a little chaotic in the best possible way. Number 5. Funeral potatoes. The casserole with the strangest, most tender name of all. Shredded or cubed potatoes, cream of chicken soup, sour cream, butter, and grated cheddar, all crowned with a crunchy layer of crushed cornflakes and baked until golden and bubbling. Wikipedia and the Deseret News trace it to Utah's Latter-day Saint community in the late 1800s, spread by the Relief Society women, whose duty included feeding the bereaved. It could be made cheap and fast and in vast amounts, exactly what a grieving family's gathering needed. They even put it on a souvenir pin at the 2002 Salt Lake Olympics. Creamy, crunchy, and steeped in compassion, it is comfort itself. Number 4. Pigs in a blanket. Little cocktail sausages or hot dog pieces wrapped in crescent roll dough and baked until the dough puffed golden and the sausages warmed through. They sat on the appetizer table looking cheerful, and they were gone, almost before the meal began, snatched up by children and adults pretending not to be children. Cheap, easy, and pure fun, they needed nothing but a squirt of mustard. Every potluck had a tray of them, and every tray emptied first. There's no deep history here, no old country tale. Just the simple, golden, undeniable joy of a tiny sausage in a warm blanket of dough. Number 3. Green Jell-O with shredded carrots and pineapple, the icon. We come back to the congealed table because this dish has become the very symbol of the church supper. Lime gelatin, grated carrots, crushed pineapple, set firm in a mold and turned out trembling onto a leaf of lettuce. In parts of the Mountain West, it's so beloved it's been called the official state snack food spirit of Utah, and food historians note its deep roots in Latter-day Saint and Midwest church culture. People laugh at it now. They make jokes. But the laughter is fond, and underneath it is real memory. The wobble of it on the plate, the cool, sweet bite, the grandmother who made it without fail. It is the dish that means, more than any other, you are home in this basement, among your people. Number 2. The hot dish nobody admits they miss, yet everybody asks for, just like the hook promised. Tater tot hot dish. Ground beef, a can of cream soup, green beans or corn, all topped with a tidy roof of tater tots and baked until the tots crisp golden and the bottom bubbles up around the edges. Ore Ida invented the tater tot in 1953, and the Upper Midwest church basement adopted it instantly and never let go. It is the punchline and the comfort all at once. The dish people pretend is too humble to love and then quietly take seconds of. Crunchy on top, rich and savory beneath, it is the church supper distilled, thrift and joy, and one single glorious pan. Number 1. The covered dish casserole in all its faithful glory. Not one recipe, but the whole sacred form. The cream, soup-bound, crumb-topped, foil-covered dish that a woman carried down the basement stairs in a carrier with her name taped to the bottom. It tops this list because it is the church supper. Whatever was inside, tuna or chicken or hamburger or potatoes, The casserole was the vessel of the whole tradition. The way a congregation said we feed each other, in grief and in gladness, with whatever we have, made to stretch, made to share. It came together cheap from the pantry. It fed the stranger and the saint at the same table. And when the meal was done, the empty dish went home, to be filled and carried back again, week after week, year after year, a quiet covenant pressed into a Pyrex pan. That, more than any single flavor, is what we lost when the folding tables came down. So picture that church basement one more time. The percolator, the pinching tables, the casserole carriers with the masking tape names. These weren't just dishes. They were the way a whole community held onto each other, one covered pan at a time, in a language spoken through cream soup and crushed cornflakes and green jello that nobody could quite explain but everybody understood. What we lost when these suppers faded wasn't the food, because half of it we'd laugh at now. What we lost was the table itself, the folding chair fellowship, the unspoken promise that nobody in that room would go home hungry or unloved. And what those women gave us, dish by dish, card by card, was a recipe for belonging that no restaurant has ever managed to copy. So tell me in the comments, which of these did your church have? Which dish had your grandmother's name taped to the bottom? And if you grew up at one of those folding tables, sneaking a deviled egg before grace was even said, share this with someone who'd remember that smell the second they read it.